today as Chair of Public Safety and Criminal Justice, joined by my colleague, City Council President Ed Flynn, and the District 9 City Councilor, my colleague, City Councilor Liz Braden. And today is October the 30th, 2 o'clock hearing, and we're here to discuss dockets 1434, 1511, 1514, 1515, 1516, 1517, 1518, 1540, 1541, 1542, 1544. They're a combination of both fire and police matters. We're going to take the three fire department ones first. We're joined here by Kevin Coyne and Joseph Shea, representing the Boston Fire Department. And this one, just to be noted that this hearing is being publicly recorded. It's live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-TV, broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN 82, FiOS Channel 964. We will be taking public testimony at the end of the hearing. If you are here with us in the chamber, there's a sign-in sheet just as you come in the door to your right, my left. If you're interested in testifying virtually, you can email Ron Cobb, ron.cobb, C-O-B-B, @boston.gov for the link. And for all testimony, please state your name and neighborhood and/or affiliation, and try to keep your comments to within 2 minutes. With that, I know that we've had a couple colleagues had sent regrets that they weren't able to be here, and I believe that I have one letter from my colleague, City Councilor Ruth C. Louisiane, and I also have one from my colleague, City Councilor Brian Worrell. Due to scheduling conflicts, they regret that they're not able to attend today's hearing, but they will be tuning in and getting the material and watching the video, and I believe their staffs will be stopping in as well. So with that, we're going to get right into the three fire documents, 1511, 1516, and 1517. And I can read the first one into the record, and it is 1511, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $1,181,799.09 in the form of a grant for AFG Health and Wellness awarded by the Federal Emergency Management Agency to be administered by the Boston Fire Department. This grant will fund safety training, fitness equipment to support officers' health and wellness. Docket 1516 is a message in order to accept and expend the amount of $49,173.60 in the form of a grant for fiscal year 23 firefighter safety equipment grant awarded by the Mass Department of Fire Services to be administered by the Fire Department. This grant will fund the purchase of active shooting response gear, including ballistic vests and ballistic helmets for firefighters. And 1517, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $24,000 in the form of a grant for port security awarded by the United States Department of Homeland Security to be administered by the Boston Fire Department. This grant will fund third-party training consultant to deliver 8 half-day, 4-hour sessions of modular and harbor incident response training. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to both Joe Shea and Kevin Coyne to tell us a little bit about these three dockets, and then open it to my colleagues for questions.
Good afternoon, councilors.
Afternoon,
my name is Kevin Coyne. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Administration and Finance. I'm joined by my colleague here, Joseph Shea, who is the Director of Health, Safety, and Wellness for the Boston Fire Department. Thank you for having us today. I can give you a brief overview of how these grants will be used. I'll start with 1511, which is the Homeland Security Federal Emergency Management Port Security Grant for $24,000. So the purpose of this, the funds, if approved, would be used to expand upon education and training for the firefighters that support the work of the Boston Fire Department Marine units. Currently, we have a plan to provide 8 half-day, 4-hour sessions of harbor response training. This training is also opened up to other members within the Boston Harbor, so Massport State Police also will be participating as part of the training that gets rolled out as part of this plan, if it is approved. The next one is 1516, the Firefighter Safety Equipment Grant. And this one is is for $49,173.60. Would provide additional ballistic training, personal protective equipment for the Boston firefighters. Currently, the Boston Fire Department has 10 active ballistic units. With this grant, we would be expanding that up to 15 units, and the purpose of this grant money would be used to get the additional equipment needed. So it's ballistic helmets, vests, and associated gear to outfit an additional 5 firefighter divisions. And next one is number 15 and 17 for health, safety, and wellness. It's for $1,181,789.09. And this grant is one, it's been very successful within the department for health, safety, and wellness of the firefighters. The purpose of how this will be used will be we're expanding upon our thermal imaging cameras and health and safety wellness initiatives. Under what we're proposing in this budget is cameras, a cost of additional $10,000 apiece, and we would outfit every firefighter company to have these. We'd also provide extensive training for the firefighters to be able to use these. And then also, as part of the wellness initiative that the fire department would be putting forward, would be to hire a clinical director to assist in building strong, healthy firefighters. We're expanding upon a 1-to-1 ratio of, kind of a train-the-trainer model with this initiative to make sure we cover all of the firefighters.
That's all 3, Kevin?
Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. We've also been joined by my colleague, City Councilor Gigi Coletta. To either Kevin or Joe, the thermal piece that you were talking about, is that to determine how long a firefighter has been exposed at a fire scene? Sometimes when you listen in to the scanner, when the command gets set up, they start to time the amount of time that men and women have been exposed to sort of the elements of fire and smoke, and then they swap them out, which is relatively new in the last few years, which I think is paying dividends.
No, this would be more thermal imaging, so you can look at, it's like heat sources.
Got it.
You can check behind walls without having to dig it out and cause more damage. It's more of like a camera, handheld camera, that you'd be able to check for heat sources.
Could be used for underwater as well.
Yeah, I mean, they've used it, like, it depends on how long the body's been in the water or how deep the water is, that type of thing. But I know they have used it at some point, tried to use it at least. It depends on how long it's in the water.
Right. So potentially you could prevent someone from going in where there's no person, where you have the thermal imaging. It shows you that there's no one behind the wall. So
yeah,
it helps maybe expedite the search process when you're trying to recover someone.
Correct.
Gotcha. We've also been joined by my colleague Sharon Durkin. Chair recognizes in order of arrival, City Council President Ed Flynn. Any questions of the Fire Department on these 3 grants, 1511, 1516, or 1517?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just want to first say thank you to Mr. Coyne and Mr. Shea for the professional work you've done for many years as dedicated city employees. I know, speaking on behalf of the residents, we recognize the important work that you are doing in your professionalism as well. So I want to say thank you. I don't necessarily have any questions other than the port security grant for training, $24,000 education and training. Can you maybe just give a little bit of background? I know how important the Port of Boston is to the residents, to the economy. I know the fire department plays a critical role, the Coast Guard, the Boston Police as well. Just give us a little bit of background on that grant.
So the company presently has 225 officers that are trained with the port security, and this covers all the additional areas within Greater Boston, down as far as Weymouth and up through Winthrop. And the plan would be to bring chief officers to do some extensive training on how to respond to the initial, all of the port issues that with all of the port activity within the Boston Harbor. We would also extend this out to both regional, private, and municipal partners in the Boston Harbor. Again, as I mentioned, Massport and State Police to partner with those agencies. We have to work closely with them on all of the initiatives, especially, summer is much more active, but the winter is also active with LNG tankers and other things coming to the city. Constantly, fire department looking to prepare themselves, for in the unlikely event, hopefully unlikely, of any catastrophic events. So preparedness is the primary focus of all of this.
Well, thank you, Kevin, and I think you said it perfectly, is the Boston Police, the Boston Fire, EMS. It's about working together with cities and towns throughout Greater Boston, helping them, supporting them, working as a team. What impacts the marine area in and around Quincy or Weymouth or any of these coastal communities, how has an impact on Boston. So it's about working together. So just want to acknowledge the professional work, the Boston Fire Department and the Boston Police EMS in working with other cities and towns. That's a critical part of public safety. Just want to say thank you to you, Kevin, and to you as well, Mr. Shea.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Chair recognizes Council Liz Braden.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here. I'm always intrigued about the idea about training and preparation for a catastrophic event on the harbour. Like, in terms of, do you do like sort of drills, like simulations that or is it all like a tabletop exercise? I'm
We
just
do
curious.
more tabletop, more hypotheticals. Unfortunately, we don't do a lot of hands-on training, but the potential for an incident that's low, there's a low potential, but obviously if something does happen, it's a high risk.
Yeah.
I just want to point out the tragedy we had down in New Jersey this summer with we lost 2 New Jersey firefighters. So ironically, I think we heard about this, the grant, the week of that fire. So, I think the commission really wants to focus in on this.
Yeah, better to be ready and have given some thought to it. And then also, the harbour's a busy space, and then we have the airport as well. So there's a lot of things to consider, a lot of moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's fine. That's all I had.
Thank you, Council Braden. Chair recognizes City Council Gigi Coletta. Any questions of the Fire Department on these 3 dockets?
Thank you so much, Chair, and just want to reiterate my gratitude to the Fire Department and everything that you all do. I'm very happy to see especially docket 1517 be put forth through the council. My district includes East Boston, and so we are beneficiaries, I would assume, of this grant. I walk past the fireboat quite often, and I know that you all were integral into the response, dating all the way back to 9/11 and since then. So I'm very excited to see that. Safety, in terms of docket 1516, so, and I apologize that I was late and if this has already been mentioned or is within the purview of this hearing, but this is for firefighter safety equipment. The grant will fund purchase of active shooter gear response, including ballistic vests and ballistic helmets. This just comes to mind in my conversations with the firefighters, but obviously very concerned about the equipment that they wear and PFAS getting into their blood because of things that they put on their bodies. This is not a part of that same category, right? It's completely different.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Coletta. Chair recognizes City Council Sharon Durkin.
Hi, thank you so much for your time, and obviously this is one of my first hearings on this subject, so nice to meet you both. Wanted to talk about docket 1514 about prosecuting cold cases. Can you talk a little bit more about what those funds would be used for?
That's actually a
Yeah,
police
Council,
hearing.
yeah, so.
Oh, so sorry,
Yeah, no
I
worries.
got them out of order. Okay,
That's right.
got
So
it.
just, Councilor, so of all the dockets, 3 of them pertain to the Boston Fire Department. That's docket 1511, 1516, and 1517. So we took fire first, and then we'll.
Oh, got
when we're done, we'll
it. Just
excuse
showing
that.
how new I am to this. Thank you so much. So wanted to thank you all for, I don't have any questions about these dockets. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon. And then just for our ratification, Kevin, so we have the paperwork correct. Docket 1511, that grant is $1,181,789.09. You read that correct?
I have 91 on one of my sheets here.
I'm not sure.
118, 178.91. What do you
So
want,
we have-
Jody? Yeah, no, I think you are correct.
So,
My
yeah,
sheet
so-
is wrong.
so the one- so my docket-
09 is correct.
Yeah, so docket 1511 is $1,181,789.09. And then docket 1516 reads $49,173.60. That's 1516. Does that match up?
Yes, correct.
And then the third one is docket 1517. I have that as a straight 24,000.
Correct.
That is correct,
Perfect.
Counsel.
All right, just for our edification, thank you, and I appreciate,
Sorry about that error.
no worries, Ron Cobb was on his game behind us, and he caught that in the introduction, so thank you to our very capable committee liaison and Sergeant-at-Arms, Ron Cobb. So with that, no further questions of the Boston Fire Department. Appreciate your time and attention. Look forward to putting forward a favorable committee report for my colleagues to put forward before them on our next council meeting and try to get these very precious funds to the department so that the men and women continue to maintain their safety, as well as when they're at a scene, depending on what happens, they have the necessary equipment to adjust to those situations, whether those are thermal imaging, whether it's ballistic vests and ballistic helmets, and/or the overall health and wellness through fitness equipment and what have you. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Thanks for the work you do, both
Thank
you
you.
and Kevin. Great to see you both.
Thank you.
That will conclude those three dockets, and now we're going to shift to our police department grants, and we might as well bring the whole team down. I know that we see Chris Bailey's here, Julie James, Nicholas Moore, Maria Chivas, Jenna Savage, Chris Markunis. See Deputy Operations Carmen Curry is here. If there's anyone that I did not call that will be participating, please make your way down and Thank you. Appreciate it. And we've also been joined by Bailey Scott as well, so thank you for being here as well. And I think, and it's, I think I did, is it Janice from BU? It's from BU. Anyone from BU? Oh, you guys are going to be offering public testimony, right? Very good, thank you. Appreciate you. Oh, no, well, you signed in, you're paying attention. I just didn't see that you didn't check off the box. Thank you. So we're going to continue with the public safety hearing. We have docket 50. I'll read them into the record, and then I guess they'll defer to the team as to who wants to jump in on which ones. We're going to start with 1514. Message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend a grant of $533,200 in the form of prosecuting cold cases using DNA grant awarded by the U.S. Department of Justice to be administered by the Boston Police Department. The grant will fund increase in the number of cases where the suspect DNA was identified and increase the number of convictions resulting from that prosecution. 1515, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend a grant of $317,082 in the form of a capacity enhancement and backlog reduction program grant awarded by the United States Department of Justice to be administered by the Boston Police Department. The grant will fund 2 criminalist positions, overtime, lab supplies and equipment, and continuing education expenses. Docket 1518, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend a grant in the amount of $16,387 in the form of a port security grant program awarded by the U.S. Department of Justice, Homeland Security. The grant will fund installation of 2 on-demand side sonar units on the Boston Police and Harbor Patrol unit vessels. Docket 1540, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $1,124,566 in the form of a comprehensive opioid stimulant and substance abuse site-based program known as COSSUP, C-O-S-S-U-P grant, awarded by the United States Department of Justice, administered by the Boston Police Department. This grant will fund and support pre- and post-arrest diversion of substance abuse treatment in the area of Mass and Cass. Docket 1541, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $481,919 in the form of a Burn Justice Assistant Grant, local allocation, awarded by the United States Department of Justice to be administered by the Boston Police Department. This grant will fund domestic violence management analyst at the Family Justice Center, a hub and center of responsibility coordinator, and a technology coordinator for multiple data collection, reporting, and records management systems. Docket 1542, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $446,406.09 in the form of a training grant awarded by the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security to be administered by the Boston Police Department. This grant will fund training and certification of enhanced 911 telecommunications staff. Docket 1544, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend the amount of $70,172 in the form of a federal Burn Justice Assistant Grant allocation awarded by the U.S. Department of Justice, passed through the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety to be administered by the Boston Police Department. This grant will fund the Ready Boston funding through further assessment of exploration of 3 design alternatives for flood risk reduction on Bennington Street in Boston, as well as the Frederick Park, Bell Island, and Montfern Avenue in Revere. It's an interesting one. And I think that concludes the docket. So, who wants to open up on 1434, the very first one I read? I'm sure that's not on there. On 1514. 1514 is the $533,200 for DNA. You got it.
That'll be me.
Please state your name and affiliation for the record, and you have the floor.
All right, good afternoon, Council. My name is Nicholas Moore. I'm a Sergeant Detective with the Boston Police Homicide Unit. I am currently assigned to the Unsolved Squad, which is commonly referred to as a cold case squad. This grant was actually written and obtained through my counterpart, Sergeant Detective Amy Erlinson, who's also assigned to the cold case unit, with the assistance of Mary Cheevers. This is a Bureau of Justice Assistance Grant. Basically, we've received DNA grants in 2009, 2012, historically, from the DOJ for DNA, which is expensive. Basically, obtaining DNA profiles from old evidence. We as a cold case squad investigate murders over 10 years old. We go back to about 1963. So through the process of those 2 grants, DNA profiles were obtained over the course of several years. The viable ones that are in CODIS, which is searching nationally without hits, are now what we're tasked with solving those cases. The amount awarded was $533,200. We have a 3-year timeline on it. It's itemized through personnel overtime for the unit and the crime lab, travel, contracts. We have to utilize outside labs because our lab does not have the resources for some of these cases, some of these specialized DNA cases. We have to build trees, family trees, based on the evidence or the information, the investigative leads that we obtain in investigating these cold case homicides, and as well as the City of Boston admin fee of about 10%. Basically, we had the benefit of utilizing other partners in other parts of the country. This all came in the law enforcement's radar basically in 2018 with the arrest of the Golden State Killer, who was a serial killer in California. That back then, family investigative genealogy was about kind of like the Wild West. It has since been standardized. The DOJ has standardized it. We have guidelines we have to follow. We have previous grantees, such as the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office down in Florida. We're able to see what has worked for them, what does not work for them, saving time and money. Also, more importantly, solving these cases properly. Our goal is to target about 50 cases off the bat. We've already utilized family genealogy. Without the grant, we don't have the resources to do it with all the amount of cold cases that we have with DNA profiles searching nationally without a hit. But we've seen that it works. It's brought us to the right people. It's also tested and allowed us to demonstrate our integrity where we may have gotten to the target and through our counterparts at the district attorney's office and us decided not to prosecute out of fairness to the accused. And we have a legal, moral, and ethical obligation not to go crazy with this. This is something that we want to utilize, and we've obtained the resources to utilize it. And I have any question. I know that you have a question, Counselor, but if there's any questions at all regarding it, I have all the itemizations here as to exactly what money is going to go where. I don't know if the council has it present in front of you.
We don't have that itemized list on, but we can get it. Actually, just the check sheet here. Comes a check it? No, I don't think so. We don't have it.
It was updated. It's personnel overtime is $201,964.50 for that's us and the crime lab.
Mm-hmm.
Travel $24,762.77. This for victim interviews and training because this is ongoing. This is we are constantly monitoring national case law with this, and training becomes available with our, like I said, our counterparts in other parts of the country, and we want to be able to send our people to be up to date on this. $255,000 for the DNA lab testing and investigative consultants. That's we have to utilize these outside labs. We have no choice. They're contractual, and they work in partnership with our lab. And then the $3,000 is to build family trees ongoing. We need the national databases to do that. And that's through public records, death certificates, birth records, et cetera. And then the admin fee is $48,472.73.
Great. Thank you, Sergeant Detective, for the breakdown. Where are the other labs located?
We utilize Othram and Bodie. Julie James have a better idea of the actual physical location of Othram and Bodie.
So we don't have the ability to do it here, correct?
We don't have the footprint. We don't have the footprint in the lab. There's no space to utilize this equipment that's needed.
And does the fact that we send cases out, does that cause any delays in sort of the investigation? I'm assuming
Of course it does.
Other folks send it out there as well, so.
Of course it does, yes.
It'd be great to have our own space and take a leadership role.
I agree.
Nothing better than, for a family that is not going to have their loved one returned, particularly in a homicide case, nothing better than helping bring about justice in finding the person or persons responsible for the death of their loved one. Speaking from a family's perspective, we had a very similar situation with a cousin of mine who was brutally murdered down in Dade County, and but for forensic evidence and having the resources and technology to be able to lift a print in a hair sample, which ultimately led to the capture and conviction of the person that that took our loved one from us. So I can speak personally to how this works. And unfortunately, because of all the CSI crime shows on TV, everyone thinks it's sort of like that easy, and
Correct.
a little bit more involved than that, as you know, from being on that side of it. And having spent time as an assistant district attorney, I know that the additional steps that are required to be taken before you finally can kind of get a match and or you can zone in on a suspect, whether it's through that family tree piece that you're talking about, or just being able to run it through the system where you can get additional information, potential matches, and or be able to interview folks that may not even been on your radar, that may have seen something or heard something or potentially been a witness to something. So all good there. Turn it over in order of arrival to City Council President Ed Flynn on docket 1514.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Sergeant Detective. I don't necessarily have any questions other than just want to say thank you to your team at the office that do tremendous work across the city, across the country, and we're fortunate to have such a dedicated cold case squad that really takes this job seriously, but also works closely with residents, working with the families of victims. So just on behalf of the city council body, we just want to say thank you to your team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Chair recognizes the City Council, Ms. Braden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, the cold case squad is definitely really important. How many cold cases are in your file that, are still cold?
I can't give you the exact numbers. So we only go back to we don't only go back to 63. Our records are really most accurate going back to 1963. We obviously will look into cases older than that if we have the necessary, if we still have the case file. But I'd say around 1,300 to 1,700 unsolved homicides are in our wheelhouse.
13 to 1,700?
Correct.
That's a lot of cold
Yes, it
cases.
is.
And so this grant targets 50 cases. Like, how do you prioritize cases? I'm just curious how.
Well, the DOJ has established the national standards, and part of that is that in order to do investigative genealogy, that it needs to already have a profile, a suspect profile running through CODIS, which is a combined DNA index system, which searches nationally for hits. For people who don't know, violent offenders convicted of a crime that serve, I think, over 2.5 years in the House of Correction are mandated to submit a DNA sample, and that goes into CODIS and searches CODIS. We also do case-to-case hits where we have suspect DNA in, say, California or North Dakota, and that profile would match one of our unknown profiles searching through CODIS, and that way we'll know that we have a similar, the same target profile, same suspect profile in 2 different states without knowing who the person is. Unlike the sexual assault unit, we don't have to indict the profile. The sexual assault unit has a statute of limitations where they have to indict a case by a certain time, or it's null pros. It's not prosecuted. Homicides have no statute of limitations, so we're able to. We obviously have legwork to do. We have to find out who the profile is, and we have. The goal of this grant is to take 50 unknown profiles searching nationally in CODIS that we don't know who the person is, and using familial investigative genetic genealogy in order to find out who that person is.
Okay, yeah, and I'm interested. You know, the sexual assault cases, the rape kits. Like, I know there's a huge backlog in that. That's a whole different bucket in terms of processing those. And there's a statute of limitations.
It is. The only nexus I can say for you is that we've utilized the SACI grant from the sexual assault unit for our sexual assault homicides already. And those were a separate grant that's already, the recent high profile arrests regarding from the sexual assault unit was a result of that grant through family investigative genetic genealogy. I don't work for the sexual assault unit, so I can't speak for them. Yeah. But I can tell you that's the nexus, is that we had shared some of that money.
It's opened a whole new frontier for investigative
Yes, it has.
work.
It has.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I have to excuse myself, so thank you. I'm sorry I can't stay for the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Chair recognizes City Council Gigi Coletta.
Thank you, Chair. And no questions. I just want to express my gratitude to you to the extent that you've been working with the sexual assault unit for grabbing that predator. He was a serial rapist that unfortunately victimized women in both the North End and Charlestown in the early 2000s. So I want to thank you for that and understand just how vitally important these funds are. So I appreciate you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Councilor Coletta. Chair recognizes Councilor Durkin.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the familial investigative genealogy, and obviously, you mentioned the Golden State Killer. Was there, and Councilor Braden did ask some of my questions, but wanted to ask about sort of where the information and where the DNA comes from, because I know you talked about CODIS. Are there other sources for where DNA samples may come from, and do you see that happening in the future?
Well, as far as your question goes, there's CODIS and then there's the crime scene. So that's the profiles. However, getting into this new realm here, or I want to say new, it's out of its infancy. Family investigative genetic genealogy is passed muster in the courts. It's an investigative lead where the individuals who voluntarily submit their DNA doesn't automatically voluntarily come to us. They need to authorize it to. They need to actually specifically say that, yes, please, people who may be interested in this and like, I wonder if I can help solve a cold case. I'd be like, sure, you utilize my DNA profile as well for family investigative genetic genealogy. So it comes from the community, but not without their consent or without their authorization at all, which is part of the national standardization of this, is to avoid that. We need to keep it on consent for both the legal and moral reasons, and then we work off of that. We don't automatically get that profile and that match and say, oh, we can solve this case now. It goes by the amount of centimorgans that a person shares with the suspect profile, and that'll tell us the relationship. Second cousin once removed, sibling, parent. It'll tell us the amount of centimorgans we all share with our family members at different stages. Will tell us the relationship between the person who voluntarily submitted their DNA and then our suspect DNA that's running in code is naturally with no hits that we don't know, the unknown profile. Then we have a lot of work to do. I can't say everything that we do, but I can tell you that we've already done this, and we've already saw that it works, and we've already demonstrated our integrity by not going forward on cases that we don't feel comfortable on. That's not to say the cases are, some may view it as a failure, I see it as a success, that we can be entrusted with this. But that's not to say those cases are, and the family's probably watching right now, because they know what cases I'm talking about. Those are not closed. We're still investigating those. But we are not in the business of trying to indict a person that we don't feel that we're confident that we'd be able to follow through on. At this time, that could change. When I leave here, I could get a phone call, that could change. But we have been able to reach out to counterparts that have already are a few steps. As Boston Police, we're used to be in the national standard, like the people of other parts of the country look towards for ideas. Way before community policing was a thing, we were doing neighborhood policing, Operation Nightlight, Operation Ceasefire with the clergy. We were not used to being behind the times with something, and we were behind the times with FIG. We had a decision to go right to the pros or go to college first. We elected to go to college first. And we saw how other people were doing things. We got every training we could. And we utilized our partners at the FBI, one of whom was part of the Golden State Killer investigation, an analyst for the FBI in that case, is now out here. And we've met with her several times. We're making sure that before we go to the pros on this, that we have done our schooling and do it properly. This grant is what's letting us get to the pros, because we're not doing a few cases. Our goal is to do 50, and that's 50 families and 50 victims that are just sitting there in the queue for justice. And with this investigative lead, like I said, we'll still have more work to do. We can find out who we're looking for and see if that person fits into the investigation.
That's really helpful. And sorry, just to follow something that you said with the, this is just a curiosity. When people enter into agreements with companies like 23andMe and other things, are they, and you may not know the answer to this, but just asking sort of where the source of some of the DNA may come from, because I know you said the standard is people who have accepted their DNA being used for that purpose. Is that I'm curious if that comes in the terms of some of these companies. Is that, because I know that was involved in the Golden State case.
Yes, it does come in terms. It's very specific. Every company is different, but I know that we don't utilize this from every company because not every company participates. And the ones that do are very specific about their consent agreement for this.
Got it.
And obviously, it's actually to our benefit as well. Even if we have a missed opportunity, at least we're not going to forward with something where somebody never consented, then we have problems legally down the line. No, it has to be consented, and it has to be specific that it's for this particular purpose.
Got it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the opportunity to follow some of these investigative lines that you're talking about, because I think it is incredibly important. But obviously, as we move to protect people's civil liberties, knowing where information is coming from was just a question that I had. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Does anyone have anything to add on this docket? Thank you very much, Sergeant Detective. You're free to leave if you have other important matters to attend to, like in the case squad, the cold case squad. You're welcome to stay if you want, but you're excused
Thank you,
at this time.
Thank you, everyone.
Very well. Thank you for the work that you do. Also have to read into the record docket 1434, which is an additional grant of $4,125,000 in the form of a fiscal 24 public safety answering point support and incentive grant awarded by the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security to be administered by the Boston Police Department. This grant will fund costs associated with providing enhanced 911 services. So that is added, obviously, to the docket today, and we'll get into that discussion. Docket 1550, message and order authorizing the city to accept and expend $317,082. This grant will for criminologist overtime lab supplies and equipment. Who wants that one? You got it. Thank you. Great to see you. Please state your name and affiliation for the floor, for the record.
Yes, my name is Julie James. I work for the Boston Police Department Crime Laboratory, and I'm a Criminalist 4 and DNA Technical Leader. So I am going to be talking about the fiscal year 23 DNA Backlog Reduction Grant. It's a capacity enhancement and backlog reduction grant that's administered by the Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance.
Will you be speaking on any other grants other than this one?
Just this one.
Perfect. Thank you.
So this is a formula grant that the Crime Laboratory has applied for and successfully received, I think, since 2003 or 2004 each year. And it's for the total amount of $317,082. It primarily funds salaries and fringe benefits for 2 additional staff members to come in and work in the crime laboratory. And we've maintained those positions ongoing since, like I said, 2003, 2004. And those positions are currently filled. Additionally, the work overtime hours for crime laboratory staff are also funded by this grant, as well as casework supplies for DNA testing, and then funding travel and registration for national conferences that's required by our national accreditation for continuing education for DNA analysts.
Great. So where is the city's? Where is our crime lab?
It is housed within the Boston Police Headquarters, which is at 1 Schroeder Plaza over on Tremont Street.
Right, so I thought it was an offshoot. I thought it was sort of in another building. And so based on testimony we heard earlier, we have certain capacities, and then there's other things where we have to send stuff out to other labs, correct?
Correct. So the resource allocation is twofold. First of all, we have a staffing, maximum of what people can actually generate in terms of how much staff we have. We have somewhat of a space constraint in terms of what type of instruments and things, or how many we can have and how much staff we can have. But additionally, the FIG, or Forensic Investigative Genetic Genealogy testing that the Sergeant Detective was just describing, does utilize also an additional type of technology. So that would be a type of technology testing that we don't currently offer, and would require additional staff, additional training, additional instrumentation, and space.
Right. So the lab that we currently have at Schroeder Plaza, any idea how many cases or incidents that the lab is involved with right now?
Yes, so the crime laboratory as a whole receives in about 900 to 1,000 cases per year, and the DNA section typically completes somewhere around 400 cases per year.
Any questions, Council President?
Thank you for your testimony, and thank you for your professional work, and to the civilian employees at the Boston Police. They also do tremendous and professional work as well. So I just want to highlight our civilian employees at the Boston Police. One issue, maybe it's not necessarily for you, but several departments within the Boston Police reached out to me over the last couple of years, and I'm glad you brought it up here. But money for training is crucial, whether it's DNA, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's cold case. But you really have to be, learning from your colleagues across the country, whether it's at the FBI or some of these other big city police departments as well. My wish going forward, and this is just something I just wanted to throw out for the next budget season, is really having a pot of money that is adequate for the training for police officers, civilians, to do their job effectively. But the training aspect is critical, and we can't downplay that in terms of trying to make cuts in a budget based on that not being a priority. So just want to highlight the importance of training and the importance of learning from your colleagues across the country, because it is critical to learn from each other, to know what other departments are doing. Any general comments you have about training and the important role it plays in your job?
Training is crucial. It is required by our accreditation standards as well. So if we don't attend these qualified training programs each year, we would lose accreditation in the DNA section in particular. So it's crucial that we have this grant funds to help us do these trainings, because we don't have a line in our budget, operating budget for that at the moment. And then we're not also competing with the rest of the laboratory that have other grant funds that are able to be used for for non-DNA trainings as well. Because what the Sergeant Detective was just talking about, this genetic genealogy, I mean, you learn those things and those new technologies and the innovations by interacting with our colleagues across the country, by attending these national trainings and being informed about groundbreaking technology and innovative uses of the current technology that we have. And then we can come back and talk to our partners in homicide and sexual assault and the districts. We're working on property crimes as well in our DNA section, not just the sort of more major crimes, but learning new ways to do the existing testing and being aware of new instruments, new test kits. All of that also comes from attending these national conferences and trainings. So it's really it's beneficial in so many ways.
Thank you for that answer. And I had the opportunity to visit the Family Justice Center a while back out on Commonwealth Avenue, and they do exceptional work out there. And that was one of the issues we talked about, is the importance of training and going to these conferences and learning from fellow colleagues across the country. Maybe through the chair, are we able to follow up with the Administrative and Human Resources Budgeting Office at the Boston Police, and maybe prioritizing funding for next budget for training?
That makes sense.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, that will conclude 1515. So obviously, Julie James, appreciate your time and talents and the work you do on behalf of our city, and welcome to stay if you want, but unless you're speaking on any other dockets, you're excused at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And we're going to shift to 1518. That's a message in order for $16,387 in the form of a grant to on-demand side sonar units for the Boston Police Department Harbor Unit. So I'm assuming that that's going to be Sergeant Chris Bailey, who's Port Security Harbor Patrol Unit. Welcome, good to see you, and state your name and affiliation for the record, and tell us about this grant.
Afternoon, sir. Sergeant Chris Bailey with the Boston Police Department, presently the Harbor Master for the Boston Police Department in the city of Boston. We are applying for and sought and did receive these 2 units. They're essentially the size of a laptop, and they will be hardwired to 2 of our vessels, which will enhance our search and rescue capabilities.
So you drop them down from the vessel, is that what happens, and then you're sonaring, or is it affixed?
These particular units, no, they're appendages that would be affixed to the hull of the boat.
Okay.
As opposed to what we have other units would actually go in the water. These ones are affixed to the hull.
And then they'd come up on a screen on the dash there?
Correct. It'd be like a laptop computer, essentially, is how they look, and they would be mounted to just to the cabin of the vessel.
And be able to distinguish like something that's on the floor of the ocean that may be not on a regular screen, that would tell you that something's there, or does it pick up body temperature?
There are infrared aspects to it and applications to it. They're crucial in actually body recovery. Unfortunately, as we saw this summer with the 12-year-old boy off Castle Island, it is a huge and a vital tool that we can. It's a force multiplier to add to the other agencies that aid us in large-scale searches in the harbor.
So it's some latest technology that's out there that, we currently don't have, but we could benefit from.
Correct, sir.
Council President, any questions? Sergeant?
Thank you, Sergeant, and again, thank you for the work for your team, their professional and commitment to the residents of Boston and visitors. I guess my question or comment would be, Boston is obviously a city on the ocean. Can you talk a little about the communication, coordination you do with the Coast Guard, with cities and towns across greater Boston, especially those on the ocean or the Charles River per se? What is the communication like? What is the coordination like? And I assume you guys work close together and help each other out, especially during crisis that you might be dealing with at a particular time.
Well, thank you, Councilor. Cross-agency coordination, especially in the harbor, is vital due to the limited resources we bring to bear. Per the Boston Police Department itself, it's just actually initiated through our communications division, what's called the MRC channel. Now that is, we've linked in through police officers' handhelds, has added a new channel, but that is also accessible now through Boston Fire, Massport Fire, Massport Police, Quincy PD, several of our surrounding municipalities, Somerville, Chelsea. Anyone who fields marine assets do have access to communicate now and to coordinate search efforts, criminal activities on the harbor as they unfold. We recently, just as a matter of fact, last Wednesday, we had a multi-agency active shooter on our ferries. Unfortunately, it was the same day as the tragedy in Maine. So it actually hammered home how vital interagency cooperation and communication is.
Yeah, thank you, Sergeant. I think you said it perfectly, the interagency, cities, towns, but I think Boston really leads the way in working closely with cities and towns. I think that's the job of a major police department, a major fire department, is provide assistance to cities and towns that might not have the same resources, the same personnel, the same equipment, technology, but Boston has always been there for cities and towns in and around Boston. So just want to say thank you to your team. I know the important work they do. Someone that's been in the military, in the Navy for 24 years, I had the opportunity to work with various police departments and fire departments across the country, but I see up close how professional they are. I see up close as well how your department is as well. So I want to say thank you, Sergeant.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Council President. Chair recognizes City Council Sharon Durkin.
Hi, thank you. I don't have any questions on this docket, but obviously I think it's really important. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Sergeant Chris Bailey. If you have anything else to add, and/or if you're going to participate in any other dockets, otherwise you're excused at this time.
Thank you, Council.
Respect to keeping our harbor safe. Thank you and good to see you.
Good to see you, sir.
Shifting now to docket 1540, that's a message in order that's 1.1,024,566. It's for pre and post arrest diversion, substance abuse treatment in the Mass and Cass area. And you're up, and welcome to Jenna Savage. Is it Jenna? Yeah, Jenna Savage, who's research and development for BPD. So please state your name and affiliation for the record. You have the floor.
Good afternoon. I'm Jenna Savage. I'm the BPD Deputy Director of Office of Research and Development. I work for Maria here on my left. We're excited about this grant. It was a competitive one through the Bureau of Justice Assistance. It's basically to help us in our efforts. Interestingly, the times were different when we applied because this is geared towards Mass and Cass, and we know things might be changing over there, but I think the funds will still get utilized no matter what and are still needed no matter what. It was just to support a kind of different partnership than we'd really focused on before. This is a partnership between the BPD and the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, as well as North Suffolk Community Services. We already do a lot of pre-arrest diversion, and this will continue to support that by supporting particularly BPD's street outreach unit and our citywide bike unit. But now we're also going to look at some post-arrest diversion. You know, one of the biggest challenges particularly with substance use, is that people get arrested and then they're often back out on the street the next day and none of their underlying needs are met. You know, they haven't received the services they need. So this program is going to support our partnership. It's a Suffolk County District Attorney's program called Services Over Sentences, and it's an opportunity for people who are arrested on drug offenses to, you know, this is post-arrest, but to possibly get some treatment and get some services. And it might, like, you know, if they do participate, it's all voluntary, then they can possibly have their sentences lightened or mitigated. So I just want to make sure I get this right. So basically through the program, we would be supporting recovery coaches and an SOS coordinator. Participants are provided with increased access to various types of programming with the goals of helping them achieve economic stability, safe and stable housing, educational opportunities, access to healthy food, a social and community support system, and access to high quality health care. And you know, if they don't stay in the program, then their service just their sentences just proceed as would have been. So we're really excited about it.
Gotcha. Thank you very much, Jenna. So my colleague, City Council Brian Worrell, couldn't be here. He did ask for me to ask a question, and you answered it to some degree in your comments. It's how will the funds for this be utilized to support pre- and post-arrest diversion? So I think he was looking for sort of specifics. You talked about a collaboration with the Suffolk County DA's office. You talked about service over sentences and the outreach unit and some type of collaboration.
Correct. Yeah. So the pre-arrest is more work that's being, you know, the street outreach unit, which I'm sure you're very familiar with because they've been working so hard in the Mass and Cass area. They do so much with pre-arrest diversions, really trying to get people to services, you know, without arresting them. They work really closely with our Boston Emergency Services team partner with BEST. Citywide Bike Unit is also really prevalent down there, and they do a lot of work and a lot of outreach proactively. So that's kind of, so the money that's going to be supporting the BPD is going to be both overtime and much needed equipment and storage to help them, you know, like the bike unit might need to store some stuff because they can't carry a lot with them down to Mass and Cass or wherever they may need to go. So the equipment's going to help, the money is going to help support the BPD with their pre-arrest diversion efforts, which we're already very much doing. But the new and innovative part for us is supporting this SOS program, which we're really excited about. It's been around for a couple of years already. It's already met with great success, but they're county-wide. So this is going to be supporting, I mean, most of their cases are coming from us, though, from Mass and Cass in particular. So this is going to help support specifically post-arrest diversion for folks from Mass and Cass or wherever they come from in Boston if they get moved.
And then on the pre-arrest diversion, is it for more of the users versus those that are selling? So
Correct.
Do we have a demarcation line as to when you take a look at someone's criminal record, if they've got either no record or it's fairly de minimis and it's all derivative of sort of substance abuse and mental health versus someone that's a player and they've got record long enough to wallpaper your house with, and they've got distributions, they've got possessions with intents, they've got trafficking, and then all of a sudden they raise the flag and say, oh, I want sentences over, I want service over sentence. Got to assume that there's a cutoff point, correct?
Very much so. I mean, I don't know the exact details of how the identification is made, but clearly if someone has a record and if they're known to prey upon people who have addiction, then they are not going to be eligible for this program.
Perfect. Chair recognizes Council President on this issue.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your testimony, for the important work you're doing. Are we tracking at Mass and Cass, do we track any veterans that we come in contact with, whether it's through an arrest or through the criminal justice system, or even just talking with them, knowing that they are a veteran? Do we do any of that type of outreach?
I would have to imagine, I can't speak for certain, but the street outreach unit in particular has their own data management system it's literally just for them to do their outreach work and keep track of and making sure people, like, the services aren't getting overlapped. And I would be shocked if veteran status is not something that they track. So I feel fairly confident saying that for them, the ones doing kind of that proactive outreach and out there talking with people, I am sure they know who their veterans are. I can't speak to the overall officers throughout the city, but I'm not sure if we have actually Chris would know, do we have anything in Mark 43 or CAD, for veteran status that you know? Okay. But for sure, I'm sure the street outreach unit would keep track of that and know who the veterans are. And we have a lot of service provider partners who are specializing in assisting veterans.
Yeah, there would be an opportunity if we were tracking them, which I assume we are, but there would be an opportunity to steer them into services and programs for veterans. We have a City of Boston Department of Veterans Services. My friend is the Commissioner, Rob Santiago, does an exceptional job. We also have a Veterans Court, as you know, at Boston Municipal Court. And they do a lot of outreach and services programs for veterans. So I just want to see if we can coordinate, Boston Police could coordinate with the Department of Veteran Services and the Boston Municipal Court Central Division on any type of services programs we could assist veterans that might be involved in the criminal justice system in providing some support and services for them. So again, just want to say thank you for the important work you're doing.
President, if you have, we have a monthly meeting of, we call it the co-responder meeting, where it's mostly people from BPD, EMS, and from BEST. And sometimes we have guest speakers come to kind of talk about things that might be of interest. And so if you want, if I could get maybe a contact person from you, if someone from the Department of Veteran Services, maybe someone could come and speak to us, and that would be a great way to kind of share some information.
Yeah, that would be excellent. Rob Santiago is the commissioner,
Okay.
and he's on the City of Boston email directory,
perfect.
rob.santiago.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairing as the City Council Sharon Durkin on this one.
So obviously we've been having nuanced conversations about mass and cast. So excited to see this grant here because and to hear about the great work of services over sentences. Can you speak a little more about sort of how the strategy may change given the city's overall strategy in regards to mass and cast?
This will be sheer speculation on my part because it's all happening as we speak. I mean, I know the Street Outreach Unit will continue to be heavily involved, whatever happens. You know, I can only imagine that, you know, if people are getting placed and getting more services, there might be maybe in an ideal world, the population that this is geared towards will reduce a little bit, but they're still going to be there. And if they get dispersed to other parts of the city, if they're working more closely with our best co-response clinicians out in the districts, but no matter what, I think the goal is to have this be a program that is in the city of Boston. So even if it's not in mass and cast, we will always have these, we're going to hire these recovery coaches and make sure they're working where we need them to be. We already have one full-time recovery coach that just works full-time with the Boston Police Department. We have the hub tables. So I think, you know, we're just going to make sure we kind of adapt to things as they change, but I don't really know what to expect, but I have no doubt that we will get good use out of this program no matter what.
Thank you. And obviously there's been multiple conversations happening around coordination with the housing that's available, with other wraparound services, with a conversation around how to deal with substance abuse and other things happening at Mass and Cass. So obviously on the City Council's end, after having attended, you know, a 9 and 5 hour long hearing, almost all of that hearing, thinking through that coordination is obviously really important to the City Council and really important to our, you know, what we do as like sort of an oversight body. So just wanted to flag that given, you know, it might be helpful actually for the police department to go back and watch some of those hearings and hear some of our concerns around the coordination of that area, because I think it's obviously the Boston Police Department plays a huge role, and I feel like this grant will play in a great way a really important role in this overall strategy. But thank you so much for your time and thank you for your work.
And I'll pass along that message for them to go back and watch the video for sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Jen. Are you on any other dockets?
I am not.
Perfect. Well, you are excused.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay if you want. And now we're going to shift to docket 1541, and that's a burn justice assistant grant, $481,919 to the Family Justice Center, Hub of Center and Responsibility Coordinator, Technology Coordinator for multiple data collection, reporting, records management. So, who would like to? Very
That's
good.
me.
Maria, great to see you.
Nice to
Please
see-
state your name and
Yep.
affiliation for the record, and you have the floor on docket 1541.
My name is Maria Cheevers. I'm the Director of Research and Development for the Boston Police Department. We oversee all the grant programs that you hear about often. This particular grant is what they call a formula grant, and a formula grant is based on a formula of, I want to say a mathematical formula, based on the City of Boston's annual crime rate. So every year at the same time, the City of Boston is required to send their previous year's crime data to the federal government. It used to be in terms of UCR, which was hierarchy, which is a way to report crimes in a hierarchical fashion. They recently switched it over to NIBRS, which means that every single solitary crime committed each year is recorded and sent to the FBI. So there's two forms of reporting, UCR and NIBRS. Based on our annual crime rate, there is a formula that then tells us how much money we will be able to get to utilize. The irony is, the better we do at lowering crime, the less money we get, but that's beside the point. This year, we've been awarded for $481,919. Also, every year with these funds, we utilize it to hire and continue hiring of 3 key positions that otherwise would not be afforded to the Boston Police Department via the operating budget. One of these positions is a domestic violence data analyst, and their job is to support the Family Justice Center, the DV advocates that we hire in some of our districts. We need DV advocates in all of our districts, but we don't have the money to pay for that. So we have a certain number of DV advocates currently that are covering cross districts and cross areas, but this person is that support person for those DV advocates. Every year, they're required to analyze data that is collected by them in more detailed ways than the typical crime data would report on domestic violence. Typically, we have for example, assault of someone unknown, and then assault, a DV assault. Those are the numbers you collect, but you also need other deeper numbers that sort of tell you where the crime is most taking place, what's the nature of the crime, what's the relation between the partners. And so this person does that deeper level of DV data analysis, as well as trying to access for these DV advocates training and other resources and supports that they need. As President Flynn had noted, the FJC could use a lot more support. We need more training for advocates and DV detectives, sexual assault detectives, crimes against children, and human trafficking detectives. We need other resources as well besides just training, such as equipment and resources. But this is a very valuable position in that it is a position that does support greatly the work of the DV unit. The second position is a position that we offer to our IT division, and that's also a desperately needed position because oftentimes you'll have vendors, let's say, approach city agencies, and this happens all the time, and they have the top of the line, quote unquote, technology to do X, Y, and Z. And if you don't have somebody on the inside that actually can talk the same language as some of these software representatives, you don't know if what you're buying is a quality product or if it will integrate well with the software that we already have or with the needs of the police department. I think one of the sayings is, I'm gonna get in trouble, so I won't say it. But like sometimes the sales reps are better than the technology side of it, and you have to be careful when you hire these companies because they have to understand what you need, and they have to be able to build it out because it's a lot of money. So this person's job is to really meet equally with a lot of these sales companies and these software companies and these IT companies so that they understand fully what we need, but also they hold them accountable. So the person that we hired for this position is that person that can help us in the inside in terms of technology to have these conversations with sales reps and other software companies to make sure that we're getting what we pay for. And as as time goes on and technology changes and there's innovations and all this other stuff, it all sounds great. But you have to have it able to integrate with ongoing systems. And so this person's the perfect person for that. It was a newly hired position because our other person had moved on. So, we have a new person in that role. The third position is so traditionally community policing in of its essence in the way that it operates. It's basically, Jen had mentioned the hub tables. So the hub is an opportunity for police service providers of all sectors to come together once a week and to bring forth very high-risk individuals and families that need help. They're at acute risk. When I say acute risk, they could be homeless next week. Somebody could get murdered. Somebody could, because they're a victim of domestic violence and it's escalating. A young kid could end up in a retaliatory shooting incident. There are these acute situations that we run into in every single district every single week. And as police, we need help from the experts in the community to sort of make referrals and intervene with these individuals, intervene with these families, and get them the help they need as soon as it takes place. In fact, within a 48-hour period, and that's what the hub table does. It sets that table once a week. Everybody, 30, sometimes 35 service provider organizations come to the table with police. We provide the referrals, they provide the support, vice versa. Any service provider at that table can come to that table and say, you know something, I've got a difficult situation too. Can you all help me? So we're helping each other. It's not just the police doing this one-way thing where we're just, here, help us with, these acute situations we're in. Service providers can also bring their own cases to the table. Right now, we have a hub table that operates out of Milnea Cass. So there's a table there that these service providers that Jenna had mentioned are coming to that hub table once a week. They actually have it at the Mass Ave office of the Boston Public Health Commission, so that's where they meet. We have one in Area B2 Roxbury. We have C11 Dorchester. We have E13 JP, that covered area. We have East Boston, which is a great one. Enjoy that meeting thoroughly. And so there's about 6 tables taking place right now. We want the woman who has been staffing this as the hub coordinator is moving on. We will be putting out a resume, a job description, and seeking another person to replace this woman who's leaving. And when that person comes on board, they'll not only support existing hubs that operate every single week, but they will also try to build out and grow new hub tables in different districts that currently don't have the hub. Another job responsibility that will be added to this job description when we rehire is going to be overseeing what the police commissioner's goal and one of his priorities is which they call community ComStat meetings. And these meetings are a way in which police can sit with community continuously and talk about what the crime numbers are saying and ask for feedback and input from community as to how can we work together to lower crime in these areas. So this person will help staff both of those models, and they're both extremely inherently community policing models, somewhat from the old school vein, but also the use of technology to keep track of the work that's being done. So that person is the third position that is hired through these grant funds. And that's going to be, right now it's called the Citywide Hub Coordinator, but again, it's going to also do help us with the launch of that community ComStat program.
Great. And Marie, will the 3 of those positions be housed at the Family Justice Center? Is that where they're going to be?
So one is housed at the Family Justice Center, and that is the DV data analyst. The second one will work out of ISG at police headquarters, and they're the one who does all the technology support and interfaces with the providers, software providers and others. And then the third one works out of my office, but spends most of their time in the field at these hub table meetings.
Great.
Because they're all over the districts, but they're home base, they have an office in my office.
Great. Council President, any questions of Maria Chivas on this grant?
Thank you, Maria, and it's always good to see you, and every time you come here, you're always well informed of the subject that you're speaking about, and it's a pleasure to work with you and your team, and you do a tremendous job for the residents of Boston. So I want to say thank you for all the years you have served the residents of Boston. I talked a little about domestic violence and in the Family Justice Center earlier. I actually held a hearing with Councilor Andrea Campbell on domestic violence. It's probably the best hearing I've been involved in 6 years in the council. We visited the Family Justice Center several times. I guess my question is, and as you know, Maria, I represent a large Asian community in District 2. I visited the Asian Task Force Against Domestic Violence on the first month of my job, getting sworn in, and had a wonderful conversation with the executive director. I asked her what the biggest challenge you face as executive director of this task force. And she said, it is language and communication access, because there's so many different languages spoken in the Asian community, and they just don't have enough people that can speak various languages. But what are we doing, generally speaking, to ensure that any victim of domestic violence is actually able to speak to a professional at the Family Justice Center or the Boston Police, culturally sensitive as well, that we might have language or communication and immigration-related issues? I know it wouldn't impact that, but it's also a public awareness campaign to let victims of domestic violence know that, checking on someone's immigration status would not be part of the discussion. But what are we doing to assist some residents that might not speak the language and need additional assistance?
So I'm going to answer this question from a broad lens, and then I'm going to work my way down. So the Boston Police Department itself has a line that is set up so that if a police officer goes to a call for service and he encounters a domestic violence situation and the folks that he's serving speak English as a second language, regardless of what that language is, there's an opportunity for he or she to make a phone call and get a translator on the line right away. So that when you're meeting the immediate crisis, there is an opportunity to make those phone calls and get the right people on the line. Let's say the next day the incident report is filled out, and the incident report has clearly marked that this is a domestic violence situation that needs to be followed up on. Mm-hmm. The DV advocate would then get that report on their desk. They would then do the appropriate follow-up. If they did not happen to speak the language, because they're placed geographically, so say I speak Spanish as my first language and English as my second language, and I'm a DV advocate, but I look down and it's Haitian Creole. So I could then access either my service provider partner or that helpline again to try to get, or a community partner to try to get help in my interface with that person when I follow up and do the follow-up. When we hire our DV advocates, we always try to search for advocates with a second language, sometimes a third language. Sometimes we're more successful than others. One of the challenges that we have in the Boston Police Department in terms of hiring is sometimes it takes us almost a year and a couple of months from the time we get the job description till it gets posted to work its way through personnel internally and then externally, and then they post that position. So these positions take over a year to fill if they're empty. And when that position is empty for a year, everybody else has to jump in and fill those positions. And so there's a challenge right there. And then we get, like, let's say 25 resumes. Well, most of the time, or at least some of the time in those resumes, you're searching desperately for somebody with English as a second language so that we can fill those positions with people who speak second language. Sometimes we're not as successful as others because people who speak those languages are not applying for these positions. And so if we repost, we'll have to wait another year and a half before we hire them. So we try our hardest to hire DV advocates with English who have second languages. In the cases that we don't, we introduce them right away to all the service providers in the community who do have those capacities in-house. And then they work with them to try to get that person the help that they need in their home language. But it's a struggle, and I'd like to just encourage in this public forum people who do speak English as second language to go onto the career site at the City of Boston. I think it's called Career Links. And check your website at the City of Boston and constantly look for jobs because we want to hire people who speak English as a as a second language. And we want to fill a lot of our support systems with people who have those language capacities. And when people don't apply for them, sometimes it makes it difficult because we need them.
Thank you, Maria, for that answer and exceptional job that you're doing. I also know the exceptional job of the Family Justice Center as well. I do hope to get in, to bring my colleagues there maybe in December for a tour and to see the center itself, but the employees there do a tremendous job. I also want to acknowledge when my mother was the First Lady of Boston, she did a lot of work on domestic violence issues as well. So I want to say thank you to you, Maria, but also to the Family Justice team as well.
And
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you to your mom as well.
Thank you, Maria.
Good work, important work.
Right, thank you.
Chair recognizes City Councilor Coletta on docket 1541.
Thank you, Chair, and apologize. I've been going back and forth, but I've been listening in, so I appreciate everybody's time here today. And thank you, Maria. As always, you're just such a wealth of knowledge. I would love to go to the Justice Center. I have not been, so maybe offline we can coordinate that.
Definitely.
And see all of the work that you do on a daily basis. So we are very lucky in Massachusetts. We have that 2014 law that prohibits individuals convicted of DV from purchasing or possessing firearms and ammunition, which is hailed as a national model. And so I can imagine that obtaining data and making sure that these data systems are airtight is of the utmost importance. Could you tell me how this grant, and maybe you did, I apologize if I missed it, but how this grant ensures that we're coordinating with folks who deal arms or ammunition, and just how successful that's been?
So I just want to remind folks that that is a great, amazing piece of legislation, and I'm glad we have that in Massachusetts. There are other legislative actions that are taking place right now at the state level that I encourage people to look into more, because there are other laws that are not on the books in Massachusetts that we need to start considering. That should be a separate hearing, and I think it would be good to have a local approach to sort of educating people on what those laws are that we should be supporting that would inevitably keep victims safer. However, your question particularly has to do with more of the general role of what the Boston Police Department would do if somebody, a violent partner, had a gun and they just got a restraining order. Mm-hmm. And I believe there's a protocol and a policy that the police have to make a point to go to that home and remove that firearm. I think Deputy Superintendent Curry could probably give you more details on that, but there is a protocol that local law enforcement throughout the state have to follow in those cases. With regard to the data piece that the types of things that she's collecting with this particular job do not relate to that law. It's more about really a number of benchmarks and quantity of what is taking place neighborhood by neighborhood, district by district, in terms of the types of domestic violence incidents that are happening, restraining orders, how many restraining orders, and so that's more like related to that quantitative and qualitative piece, not related directly to the law.
Thank you for clarifying that, and I'm always learning. It's there's so much happening within the city of Boston, so much important work, and so we come here to obviously be educated on what your day-to-day is, and so I appreciate you clarifying that. And I don't have any other questions at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Chair. Recognizes City Councilor Sharon Durkin.
Thank you so much, and very nice to meet you. Obviously, domestic violence is something that impacts everyone regardless of race, class, and so it's something that is, it's equal opportunity in the worst way. And so the work on this is so important, and obviously the City Council has designated October Domestic Violence Awareness Month. But awareness isn't enough. We need resources. So I appreciate this grant and what it does and what you do managing the grants at the police department. Wanted to talk a little about the CompStat initiative and how you would work within that. We obviously have been talking a little bit about CompStat around the other grants that we've approved. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about CompStat, how it relates to the work you do with domestic violence, and so I'll give it to you. Yeah.
So let me just say in general, there's a CompStat that takes place within the Boston Police Department, and that CompStat is a close eye on all the data that's taking all the crimes that are trending in every single neighborhood. And so we have a traditional CompStat that is internal to BPD, in which we invite people all the time to come and see. This is a different initiative. This is an initiative that takes CompStat into the community, and we had recently received a grant that we're not talking about today that actually Jenna wrote. So that's why I'm like, Jenna, come here. But it's more about us taking it into the community and getting the community to understand trends and drivers of trends and what is happening in their own neighborhood and how they can be helpful. And so the grant that we got was a technical assistant grant that allows us to understand how best to do this. And then this hub person is going to help support and staff that work, and she's going to give you a little bit more detail about what that will look like.
Sure, I can clarify a little bit. So it's not technically a grant that we got. We got technical assistance. There's no money attached to it, which is why you haven't heard about it before. But so one of Commissioner Cox's new initiatives that he's super excited about is this idea of community CompStat. So as Maria mentioned, there is it's more of an internal process that goes on every other week where it's kind of an accountability and just the BPD kind of inner, where's crime happening, how are we addressing it, what's working, what's not working, and that happens internally to the BPD and tends to be pretty internal to the BPD. And so something that Commissioner Cox wanted to start was taking that idea of CompStat into the community. I think we've had 3 so far, and they've all been super successful. And I think the biggest point there is really building community trust and getting that input, having it be more of a conversation back and forth so that they know, like, this is what we're finding in your community, but also tell us what we should be looking at in your community. And we've done some surveys ahead of time. What do you want to make sure you hear about? Surveys afterwards. Did you learn what you wanted to learn about? What did we do wrong? What did we do right? And so we kind of embarked on this on our own. And then when we were invited to apply for this technical assistance award, I think it's just going to really help us formalize it and do it in a more organized fashion and maybe put some resources behind it, because right now we don't really have any resources behind it. But this will help us kind of get more organized and figure out how we can do it in a more formal way. We've already been doing it informally, and it's been going really, really well. So I think the idea is that this person who's been doing Hub could also, because this is such a community-oriented project, could really also help lead that project as well, or at least take on a leadership role with it.
That's really helpful. And just another question about sort of the 3 jobs. Is there a breakdown of what each job would, because obviously this is a pretty big grant. Is there a breakdown of, or do you already have the idea of what the salaries would be?
Yeah, so these positions are typically ongoing. So for example, the DV analyst, she has been in that position ongoing for several years. It just so happened that the technology position person just left. So then it took us almost a year and a half to replace that person. And so this new one has been on for maybe 6 months. Fantastic, really good at his job. I have his job description. I have all 3 job descriptions that I can get you. And then the third one, the hub coordinator hasn't left yet, but she will be leaving. So I will be, with the help of Jenna, we created a brand new job description so that we could add the community CompStat piece into the job description. I hope it doesn't take us a year and a half to fill that position. If it does, I'll probably be doing the hub and helping out for a while until I can get somebody in that position. And so I can get you a job description for all 3, and in that job description, you'll see the starting salary of all 3.
We can also get you a copy of the budget.
Oh, got it. That's really helpful. I was just asking because I know with other grants that we've funded, oftentimes people will say, oh, this is over 5 years or this is over this many years. So I was just curious. But thank you so much for your work, and thank you for answering my questions.
And because it's a formula grant, it's not 2 or 3 years. It's ongoing every year.
Got it.
It's a good thing.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor. Maria, are you on any of the other dockets?
The Sex Offender Registry Board, do you have that?
Perfect, yep.
Okay.
So I'll take that one right now. That is docket,
Yes.
that is docket 1544.
Yeah.
Let's see, $70,172. The grant will fund an annual, looks like Boston address verification procedure mandated by the Mass Sex Offender Registry Board.
Yep.
So if you can just speak on that, that'd be great.
Yep. So this is a federal burn justice assistance grant allocation fund that is awarded by the U.S. Department of Justice to the Executive Office of Public Safety. And then the Executive Office of Public Safety puts it out to all local jurisdictions in Massachusetts. Every year, people apply for those funds so that they can work after their shifts, weekends, and off hours to visit these addresses that sex offenders have given to authorities prior to their release. So if I'm a sex offender, I have to give an address, and I have to ensure that that address is out of a school zone, because it's illegal for a sex offender to move into a school zone. Oftentimes, when people are leaving lockup and go and returning back into the community, some of these people are indigent, and so they put addresses such as like homeless shelters into the system. And then you find that all these people who've put homeless shelters into the system, you don't really know where they end up living in the end. So that's why you have to check their address, because they're supposed to, by law, notify authorities like, okay, I'm leaving the homeless shelter now. I'm now going to live at 52 Longwood Ave. If they don't tell authorities that they've moved to 52 Longwood Ave, then they're breaking the law. So it's impingent upon the sex offender themselves to keep authorities well aware of where they move over time. Many of them don't do that. And so that's why we have to check those addresses, and we have to track down where these people are living. So A, we find that they're not living in a school zone, and B, we understand where they are living. So that's the law, but in order to, enforce the law, we need to have this program exist, and we need to have local jurisdictions have the ability to double check on where these sex offenders are living, and that's what this money is for.
And then somewhat of a loophole that we had discovered years ago where folks will put, it'll be I guess it won't be a personal address, it'll be like a park.
Exactly.
Or, so how do we sort of close the loophole in addition to a significant number, particularly say over at Mass and Cass, they're probably putting Mass and Cass, right?
Yep.
Or they might be putting Pine Street. Or they're putting locations where there's you can't get mail. So the court can't contact you and/or any other agencies that's looking for you. So how do we sort of curtail those that have to report pursuant to the Mass Sex Offender Registry, but they're putting actually a known address?
Right. And that's a huge issue, and that's an issue that's plagued this whole legislation since day one. And so oftentimes police will visit those locations, identify those locations as what they are, and then report it to the state. So the state has almost like a map that they utilize to understand, like, okay, that's a false address. You can't put that address in, because now we know, based on these visits and based on this mapping, where these false addresses are. And again, sometimes they're false addresses, they're parks, but other times they're very well-known, massive homeless shelters. And sometimes they do go to those homeless shelters and they stay there for a couple of weeks until they figure out what couch they're going to go to next, or what permanent housing they're going to go into. Sometimes they put the homeless shelter on purpose and they never go to the homeless shelter, and they sort of fly under the radar. So it's so important that we're on the ground tracking this, because you can't track it from a geomapping system behind a desk. And that's another reason why it's important that police are able to go into the community themselves and sort of tie these addresses down to what they actually are. I don't know, and I could probably ask and get back to you, like how much it's improved over the years, because it's an ongoing issue.
Right.
And new locations are going to pop up all the time that they put into the system that don't.
Right. And remember, because we've had public hearings here in front of the council where we were looking at that loophole and sort of how do we curtail that in terms of making sure that they're not in a school zone and or not in a family housing development, but at the same time giving addresses that might be the Boston Commons or the Public Garden, or they're not sort of real technical sort of residential addresses, and how we can get to closing that so we can better track these individuals.
It's difficult.
Council President Flynn, any questions on this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Maria. And as a former probation officer, I also know that the court system also plays a critical role working with the Boston Police, especially level 3 sex offenders. Most of them, or many of them, I should say, are still on probation. And Suffolk Superior Court does have, the last time I was there, does have 2 probation officers that work specifically on sex offenders that are on probation.
Right.
So Maria, I guess my question is, some of the sex offenders do report. They are required to report to the Boston Police Department to get verification. So they do report to the probation. They do report to the police department. Is that a state requirement that they must do that so the sex offender registry board can ensure they're in compliance?
Yeah.
Okay. The other question I had is, I think my counsel Flaherty highlighted it too. A sex offender could be living at, say, the Pine Street Inn, and get verification from the Pine Street Inn that he's been there for the last 30 days, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they've been sleeping there the last 30 days. So actually knowing where the person is putting their head down at night is different from getting verification on where they're residing. So I know this money will be used to provide, compliance, but also to ensure that the public is also safe and that we are doing the best we can on these critical issues. My question, Maria, is if we had unlimited money, what could we do to further protect the public, especially on making sure level 3 offenders are in compliance and doing what they're supposed to, reporting as required, engaged in treatment, sex offender counseling is also an important part of it. But what is another thing that we can do to make sure that they're getting the services or counseling, but also, even more importantly, that the public is safe?
Well, I think when you think of pedophilia and the broader range of that, it's typically, you have to be careful for the people that you're closest to, the people that you trust. And so, if you think of this from a very broad range in terms of prevention, because prevention, they say an ounce of prevention, and so I think the public being more aware of ways in which to protect our families and our children in schools, in the playground, in after-school programs, in, places where we put them that we need to be able to trust so that we could be able to go to work every day from 9 to 5. So I think, the broader answer is unfortunately the best answer, because it's really around educating people in general around safety and the fact that 90% of the time it's someone you know and somebody you trust and somebody that you would never expect. And so as parents, and I'm talking about, LGBTQ, cis, parents across the board, the idea to trust your child, talk to your child, speak to your child about it, have conversations so your children know every single day that they should not be afraid to tell you things, and that you will believe them and that you trust them. That dialogue with your child. But also you have to be strong around letting people know in not so subtle ways that you are watching. I know it sounds a little much, but as a parent, you're going to drop your kid off somewhere in the morning, and you want people to know that you're dropping your kid off to, that you pay attention to this stuff and that you talk to your child about this stuff, because you're putting on notice anybody who may fall through the cracks in these service providing areas. And it sounds a little cold, but I've read the research and I've read a lot about this, and it's sort of the strength of somebody to not be afraid to have these conversations with everybody in their circle that goes near their child, that you are watching, you know what I mean? And so that's the prevention piece. When it comes to the piece you're talking about, it's difficult because there's a certain population of people that are being released that are indigent. Some of them, probably the majority of people who've been charged with this may not be indigent. They may go back to their mom's house, or they may go back to their own apartment, or they may go back to their partner's house. But there is a majority, and those are the people that are easier to keep track of. It's that smaller percentage of people that are actually indigent that's very difficult to track, because they are sleeping under bridges one day and in a homeless shelter the next, hanging out at the park, another day. And so it's so scary. And, I don't claim to know the answers, but I do think if parents read about the research around this, and they educate and embolden themselves to be that protective person in that space for that child, and they open up that dialogue with that child in a developmentally appropriate way, then we will go a long way in prevention. And hopefully that will help a great deal. Sometimes you never know. There's always that unfortunate situation that no matter how proactive a parent could be, something could happen. But if you're a parent and you're prepared enough and educated enough and proactive enough, you may be able to prevent it in the first place.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Chair recognizes City Councilor Gigi Coletta.
No questions, Chair. Thank you.
Chair recognizes City Councilor Sharon Durkin.
Hi, I'm so happy you're here, and please feel free to interrupt me if I'm off base, but did have a question. We do have some sex offenders living in my district, as I imagine with all districts, and have gotten emails about a specific sex offender that lives in I don't want to at all read it into the public record, the situation, but I'm just curious what resources are available to residents and how they should reach out to when they are not in a school zone, because I know we're talking a lot about the address tracking and other things that this grant would fund, but just curious if there are resources available to city residents who want to reach out about. I think this is a level 2 sex offender that lives in one of our downtown neighborhoods.
Yeah. And did you find that information from the website? Like how
I found this information from constituents who had reached out about it originally, but I could verify that.
Yeah, I mean, I only asked because there is a website that every single solitary resident in the state of Massachusetts can go to, type in their address, and then they'll show you a map of where all the registered sex offenders are living in your area. We had the conversation about this last night at my house, because we always have these lovely conversations. But so when you go to that website, they'll also tell you what level that person was. And so oftentimes, especially if you're working and you leave in the morning and come back at night, you may not see that person ever, but you know that, around the clock on this, around the block, this person lives there. I would, a big suggestion there would be to educate the schools in the area and the after-school programs in the area of this person, because sometimes they don't know. So say you're in a nonprofit, and you never even thought to look on the website. And so I think if parents would get together and sort of form some kind of education conversation to utilize it to reach out to churches and schools and after-school programs and youth centers, so that those people also understand who these people are in the neighborhood. So if they do see them on the premise, or they are sort of milling around the school, or then that is a time for you to have them take action, whatever that action may look like. Either somebody, going over to them and saying, we'd like you to leave the premise, we understand, you're a sex offender, or, and maybe if the person gets aggressive, other actions can be taken. But organization, communication, and coordination between parents, I know it's hard because everybody works so much, and it's hard when you have little kids and you get 50 other things going on after school and on weekends. But if there's a way that people could sort of even meet once a month and talk about it, and then use that as a forum to educate. Because I'm not sure what schools are doing and after-school programs and nonprofits are doing to keep an eye out on that website, like maybe a parent would, you know.
That's really helpful. And obviously, really thank the concerns of residents of my district for being aware and being able to create a community conversation, because I think that is really important. And I no further questions on this grant.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Maria. You're excused if you're
Thank you.
That's fine. And thank you for your time and patience here, both Chris McGrunis and Deputy Carmen Curry. We're going to take both of these dockets together as they both pertain to the enhanced 911. The first of which I'll just read is docket 1434, and it is a grant for $4,125,000 for public safety and security administered by the BPD for enhanced 911 services. And then we have the other item on the docket, which is docket number 1542, and that one is message in order for to accept and expend a grant for $446,406.09, and that also is training and certification for the enhanced 911 telecommunications staff. So with that, both dockets, you can speak on both of them and let us know what's going on over there. As you're well aware, and I know Deputy is aware of our concerns with respect to the 911 operators in particular, and trying to get them that 4 and 2 schedule. I think it's 4 and 2, trying to backfill the open positions and trying to make it a more attractive position so we can retain committed, talented, passionate folks who love doing what they're doing. But as you know, 911 is currently taxed. We're losing folks, we're having a hard time filling those spots, and some of the bare bones. I know that on the contractual side, I think that we were able to solve some of those issues, but getting to 4 and 2 so that men and women of 911 get a weekend here and there as opposed to no weekends, and also being able to debrief when they take a traumatic, stressful call, that they have the opportunity to make sure that we're wrapping around them, whether it's peer support or just giving them a little bit of TV time out to kind of collect their thoughts before we get them back on the headset. So with all of that, good thing to see that there's an infusion and an investment here, which I'm hoping is going to solve some of those issues, but I'll leave it to both of you. You guys have a front row seat over there. But I know that as a council, we're very concerned with the conditions over as our 911 operators have brought to our attention a number of very concerning issues that we hope that we can be able to address. We addressed some of it in the last budget cycle. Moving forward, working together. I know how much you care about the men and women over there. We all know the vital function they play once they receive a phone call and what happens on the end of that phone. You know, we need people on their A game, and we also make sure that we're respecting the work that they do. So with that, Chrissy and Deputy Carmen Curry, you have the floor.
Okay, I'm Carmen Curry, the Deputy Superintendent assigned to the Operations Division, and I'm going to just talk about I'll let Chris talk about the grant and how that money is going to be utilized, but I just want to update you on where we are with staffing. I know last time we were here, we weren't at a good place, but I have to tell you that we have made some good strides in terms of staffing in the comm center. So right now, if I look at the statistics from last year, this time we had only hired 9 individuals for the division, and today we have hired 24. So the numbers are up. We still have shortages. On October 21st, we had a hiring day, which we opened it up to 911. It was just for 911 because that's where the biggest deficit is. And we had applicants, about 60 applicants come into headquarters. They were able to do the critical assessment, which is the typing test and the critical thinking. And after they took the test, if they passed the test, they were allowed to interview with the Operations 2 teams. And once they were able to pass the interview, they were offered a contingency position. And the next steps for them, they will have to just pass the rest of the onboarding process, which is the drug test, psych, as well as the background investigation. So out of the 60 applicants who came out that day, we have offered 17 call takers a position. So looking at those numbers, right now we have, for call takers, we have 15 openings. So if we hire those 17 individuals, if they pass the background, we'll be in a good place as far as staffing for the call takers. We still have some openings for the support unit, which is 7 positions that are vacant, and for dispatches, we have 9. We've been really focusing on the call taker because that's the biggest deficit we have, but now that we're moving forward since the hiring day, we can focus on the other positions in the division. So I just wanted to report that. We still have lost positions there or employees there, but it's not like it was so in 2022, we lost 20 staff members, and in 2023, we've only lost 8. So I think with the settlement agreement, that has helped a whole lot with retaining some of the employees there. So we're working towards trying to fully staff it so that we can move towards the 4 and 2. So that's where we are with staffing.
All right, that's great. Much improved from the last time, so I appreciate your attention to that, Deputy Superintendent and Chris. And I think, like you said, the 4 and 2 from being able to maintain that workforce. If you're not getting a weekend off every once in a while, I can't even imagine, particularly if folks have children over there or they're just trying to have some semblance of a life. They got to attend a wedding or what have you, but they're forced to work on weekends. And then in addition to obviously maintaining that team, I think there were some issues maybe around parking, if they have the ability to sort of maybe park near the work as opposed to either not having parking or having to walk great distances after a long shift. Just those little things on the edge that make the job a little bit better. I know 4 and 2 and some type of parking accommodation will go a long way in helping us retain the talent that you're currently vetting, because it's just a matter of time until those folks start the job and then they realize, well, I'm not getting weekends off and I don't have a parking spot, or I have to walk several blocks late at night or early in the morning. So it's those like the little, the wraparound intangibles, I guess you'd call them, that can make the job more enticing, if you will. So with that, Chris, you just want to dive into a little bit of the other part of the 2 grants?
If you just want to, Christopher Marconis, Director of Operations Division for the Boston Police Department, I can just kind of go over the 2 grants, just in general. The first one, docket 1434, is the support grant in the amount of $4,125,000. That's an annual grant. It's a formula-based grant that the city receives each year. It's based on call volume and population. That support grant goes to helping with the technology up there, the maintenance of the technology. It also goes to cleaning of the operations division. We biannually have a company come in and do sort of a deep clean up there for all the workstations and positions, because as you can imagine, it's a 24/7 environment. It gets pretty dirty up there. We like to keep it clean and healthy for the workers. We're also able to procure ergonomically acceptable chairs and things of that nature through this grant for the workers up there, which is helpful. Working in, sometimes they're working long hours up there and they're sitting at their desks. So that the money goes to help that. It also does help defray the costs of the salaries that the city has incurs for the personnel up there. So the money is direly needed. It's an annual grant, and like I said, it's based on a formula. It's awarded annually by the state 911 department. The second grant, docket number 1542. In the amount of $446,406.09 is another annual grant. It's a training grant, and that grant goes to ensure that we are compliant with all the Commonwealth of Massachusetts' requirements for our call takers, that they're certified to the state, and that they're also keep up that certification. There's a continuing education requirement for each and every telecommunicator, call taker, and dispatcher in the operations division, that they have to satisfy 16 hours of continuing education training each and every year. So that grant goes a long way to help them with that as well.
Perfect. Council President Flynn, any questions on these 2 grants?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chris, for the important work you are doing and your team, and also had the opportunity to work with you, Deputy Superintendent, for many years, and hold you in high regard for your professionalism. as well. I also want to acknowledge Councilor Flaherty. Certainly, you have another two months left, Councilor Flaherty, but the dedication you provided to the residents has been exceptional, and it's these types of issues that not many elected officials like to follow, but you get into the weeds, but you really advocate for the city employees that maybe they don't make much money, but they have a difficult job, but they need someone to advocate for them. But you've effectively done that, Council Flaherty, and that's a critical job as 911 operator. And I'm afraid, to be honest with you, when you leave, Council Flaherty, no one's able to follow these types of issues as closely as you do. You, working with the commissioner and with the deputy superintendent, were able to hire more 911 operators, but that's a very stressful job doing that type of assignment as a 911 operator. So I just want to acknowledge your work, Council Flaherty. So my question to Chris or to the deputy superintendent is, and I think Council Flaherty briefly mentioned it, but what are we doing to help the 911 operators after a very difficult call? Maybe they've been on the call 10, 15 minutes, working on a stressful situation, maybe life and death. How do we give that person an opportunity to take a break, to relax, to catch their breath, but not to go right into the next call? Give them an opportunity to wind down a little bit and have an opportunity to take a break. Are we doing that?
So I think, as the staffing numbers improve, yes, we're able to do that. It was certainly much more difficult when we were, short of staff to allow folks to leave the floor. Now that the staffing numbers, particularly on the 911 side, are beginning to improve, we do have that opportunity where the supervisor may allow somebody that takes a difficult call, an emotionally charged call, a traumatic call, and allow them to go somewhere and take a break, take a breather, and sort of recalibrate. Because it's the calls don't stop coming, and sometimes you just need that break.
I think of this job, it's a critical job, but I'm wondering, did you ever do any research on this job of the 911 operators and the stress level they're under, and or have they developed post-traumatic stress from dealing with very difficult calls consistently, maybe 10 hours a day, maybe 12, 14 hours a day, 4, 5, 6 days a week. But at some point, your body physically and your body mentally cannot endure that type of stress.
Yeah, it's very true. You develop compassion fatigue, and you're subjected to vicarious trauma through a lot of these calls. I can speak myself as a former 911 call taker, not here in the city of Boston, but with the state of Massachusetts prior to coming on board with the city. And it is very stressful, and you do sometimes, unfortunately, take it home. There is academic literature out there. There have been some studies done on vicarious trauma in the 911 center, and there is a direct correlation with working in a 911 center and PTSD and other mental health related issues. So yeah, that has been studied. Probably not enough. You hear a lot about police officers, firefighters, EMTs, but certainly in the 911 field where you are the first person on the phone with somebody in crisis, and you're trying to get them the help they need, and you really are the first one that they're interacting with in the emergency response ecosystem. So it's critical. It's something that we need to continue to push for. We're nowhere near where we need to be, but it's something that we are continuing to push for.
The hiring process for 911 has to be, as you know, I'm not telling you how to do your job, that it almost has to be ongoing, regardless if you have the necessary numbers in there, because there's always a chance of people moving on, promoted, leaving for various reasons. how are you engaged in that human resources process of constantly trying to hire people into this critical job, but knowing that it's a difficult job, it's a stressful job, it doesn't pay all that well. But how are we doing that under those very challenging circumstances?
So we sit down with our bureau chief and with, the Human Resources Department at Boston Police almost constantly, going over plans, trying to fill positions, trying to move the process along, speed it up. As you know, it's very difficult sometimes getting positions posted. We've made some headway with that. I'd actually like to thank the mayor's administration for helping us a lot with that, getting some of these positions posted and speeding up the process. That they've helped get some of these things fast-tracked. But it is still challenging. It is still challenging.
What is the entry-level salary for a 911 operator?
So a 911 operator, today, we just executed a contract, and it's just over $60,000 a year now.
60?
Yeah, it was in the 40s prior.
Okay.
$49,000.
What group retirement are they?
Group 1.
Is it an option to consider them down the road, consider them Group 2 perhaps?
There is a push. There's been a push probably now going back at least 20 years on that on the state level. It really hasn't gotten off the ground. Every year there's legislative hearings, there's committee hearings on Beacon Hill talking about this. It's not just an issue that affects the city of Boston, it affects telecommunicators across the Commonwealth. And it's also an issue nationwide because they are classified essentially right now, 911 personnel and dispatchers, as clerical staff, which clearly they are not. The stress and the conditions, the working hours and things of that nature that they're subjected to are far different than anybody that's in the clerical field.
Thank you so much.
It's certainly something that needs to continue to be pushed at the state level. I know that the union has been pushing it for a number of years. I've written letters myself to my state legislators urging them to pass this and to move telecommunicators at least into Group 2.
Yep.
But they're still considered Group 1, unfortunately.
No, thank you, Chris. Thank you for letting me know that. I didn't know that. This is something I'm going to do a little bit more research on. As a probation officer, I was in Group 2, and that's only a fraction of the stress that I dealt with compared to the 911 operators. 911 operators statewide, here in Boston statewide, they deserve to be in Group 2. Maybe that will help the hiring process for some men and women that want to go into this field. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Deputy Superintendent, as well. But we here in the Boston City Council have great respect for the 911 operators throughout the city and throughout the state as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chair recognizes Sharon Durkin, Councilor.
Thank you so much, Chair. This is obviously, this conversation about 911 dispatchers is really important to me personally as someone who works on mental health for city workers. So I wanted to read a little excerpt of something I received from Anthony Landry, who's the political director of SEAU 888, which just tacks onto this conversation. The trauma is real, the hopeless feelings are real, the lack of mental health resources for City of Boston employees is real. I think we could do more to support their mental health care, and obviously wanted to highlight the work of the Peer Support Network in this conversation as well, because I think it's so important. And obviously this grant associated with funding the costs associated with 911 services is something that we should obviously approve, and it's a formula grant. But just wanted to state that it's so important for our workers. They're under such stress, and obviously in the past few years, there's been multiple instances that really have come to light through conversations I've had about mental health for city workers that I won't read into the record, but I think as someone who works with the police department, you've probably heard some of the things that have happened. So just want to be totally, just because we have this ability for a hearing, just state my support for those workers that are advocating for more, because they deserve it. And so I think, as we look at the classifications of non-sworn, police department employees, I just want to state my support for us to reclassify employees into something that really adequately gets at the level of service they're providing to our city, because it's something that's incredibly important to me, whose family has dealt with mental health issues, and also who really thinks that who really wants to be a champion for mental health services for city workers. So just wanted to share that, and then ask if, and just ask that, I know that this is for, cleaning, cost of salary, so many other things. Is there any money in this formula grant dedicated to mental health services for city workers, especially non-sworn 911?
Sure, that's a great question. So the support grant, the larger grant here, unfortunately, they don't allow us to spend. The state has certain categories we can spend money on. It's certainly something we could approach the state on, to look at in the future. The training grant, we are able to spend funds out of that grant, and we have, to allow for our peer support team members, the Metro Boston peer support team, to be trained and certified. There's a certain amount of training that goes into becoming a peer support team member, and that is an allowable expense under the state 911 training grant. So that is, that is something we've done in the past. We also, there are other mental health related classes for the staff that are also allowed under that training grant, both for the employee and also for dealing with somebody that's in mental health crisis that may dial 911. And, there's certain techniques and certain classes that are available to allow them to kind of hone in their techniques of how to speak to somebody that's actively in crisis.
Thank you so much. And obviously, I just shared my first maiden hearing on mental health for city workers, and it had been spoken into the record, but want to speak it into the record again here, that there have been a couple instances of people sleeping in the quiet room, which is obviously something that's very important to the peer support network. So just want to share that as much as we as the city council can highlight the importance of those spaces for city workers to deal with the trauma that they're dealing with on a daily basis. I know some of these employees are taking over 200 calls a day. They're incredibly hardworking, and I obviously thank you for your work. But just want to highlight how much I care about that as a city councilor, and how important those services are to keeping our city running. But also just highlight some of those experiences don't cost any money for people to have good experiences with the quiet room and other things. So just want to advocate for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor, and thank you to Deputy Superintendent Carmen Curry, and also to Chris Markounis, Division of Operations of BPD. Appreciate your time and your patience today. We went through 11 dockets, very important and critical for both our police department and our fire department. So unless you have anything further of me, you are both excused, and appreciate the work that you do on behalf of our city.
Well, thank you for your continued support.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Superintendent. Anyone wishing to offer public testimony may do so now, or forever hold your peace. Come on up.
I didn't sign in.
That's all right. You just, we know you, but for everyone else that doesn't, just state your name and affiliation for the record.
My name's John Provenzano, City of Boston resident, South Boston. I want to thank you people for being here. Chairman, I want to thank you for having this is one of the most important, these dockets are one of the most important, as far as I'm concerned. I'm here not for myself, but my family, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. I can't believe that this place doesn't have 50 people here that would like to speak up. Councilor Durkin, I want to thank you. Coletta left, and I want to thank her, and also Councilor Braden. But there's so much. This city is one of the safest cities in the country, and the only way we're going to keep it safe and safer is by these kind of dockets and the monies that we spend for really important issues. So I want to thank you. Councilor Flaherty, I would say this anytime, whether we were here or not, but Council President Friend brought up the fact that this is your last term. I don't know what we're going to do because I don't see the support. I've gone to a lot of the meetings and I don't see the support, even when you were going through these dockets before, that there were people that were voting against some of these dockets. There's no problem in voting against it if you bring up the questions as to why this docket should be less than what it is or whatever. But they're not here. They're not here, and that's so frustrating. I witnessed Wednesday talking about a building, changing the name of a building from something that happened 400 years ago, and they were being led astray by a counselor that that's more important than stuff like this. I don't understand it, and I'm hoping. I wish you well as to where you're going, but I wish it's personally and more so selfishly, I wish you weren't going. But that's the way it is. I'm not going to continue going on, but I want to thank you people for here. Ron, I want to thank you for letting me have the info so I can take all my notes, bring it back to my family, and go over it with it. And thank you again. I'll let it go at that. God bless you all.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Good luck first year. Whatever I can do, you can get my number through one of these lugs. One of these gentlemen over here. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. Thank you.
Good to see you as always. Anyone else wishing to offer any additional public testimony? Seeing and hearing no desire, that will conclude the public testimony portion. No one on Zoom, correct? Brett, you're good. Thank you. So again, thank you both, Chris and Deputy. And with respects to docket 1434, 1511, 1514, 1515, 1516, 1517, 1518, 1540, 1541, 1542, and 1544. The Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice will be adjourned with the goal to have committee reports on all 11 of these dockets before the City Council in short order for a vote before the Council. So thank you all for your time and attention, and this hearing is adjourned.